Some might say cinema today is in such a sorry state that when you look back 30 years ago to 1994, that it looks even worse. And it definitely looks worse when you compare it to today's movie, Pulp Fiction, which I've got to say, haven't seen it again, is still a masterpiece.
Oh, it's beautiful. Absolutely amazing. I was back in college doing media studies. I just somehow just started doing media studies, and Tarantino's name was going around from Reservoir Dogs. And I actually saw Pulp Fiction before Reservoir Dogs. And it was because of its writing and because of the, well, dialogue, all of it. It was a masterpiece immediately. You know, it kind of exploded Tarantino as a, I don't know, as a successor to Scorsese and all the rest of the auteurs, I suppose, and Kubrick, and it's got the camera work, it's got everything in it.
It's such an amazing thing that this movie that cost $8 million, and by the way, $5 million of that was just to the cast. So technically, this movie cost $3 million. And it's amazing to consider that it's only his second movie, yet he had final cut. Before he made Pulp Fiction, he happened to meet his idol, Brian De Palma, who at that point was married to Gail Ann Hurd. Gail Ann Hurd was married to both James Cameron and Brian De Palma. That's a baller, that is.
Sounds a tart.
Brian De Palma, being so impressed with Tarantino, he and Gail Ann Hurd were prepared to help finance Pulp Fiction, not realising at that point that he'd already been offered like a final cut. He was further along in his career than even Brian De Palma realised.
The making of it really, it was a lot to do with Danny DeVito and Bruce Willis himself. It's all the networking of those guys going, you need to look at this guy. And it's, you know, it's the word of mouth really that now, I don't know if you'd be able to have that, because everyone's fluffing themselves on Instagram before you can, you know, start talking about them. They're already there talking about themselves.
2.5 hours long. And isn't it incredible that a film that long, that is powered completely by dialogue, is never boring in the slightest? Apart from, say, French Girlfriends, there's never really any lagging going on.
Oh, no. See, I hate to pull the I was there at the time card again. Just the way that it was structured, you had no idea what was coming next, so it kind of kept you so engaged.
Yeah.
And obviously Samuel L. Jackson in a real, one of his first real roles. It was something different, and it really did keep you just staring at the screen, going, "What is this? This is something super special." In fact, I'm sure I went to see it on a Friday and then went again the next Tuesday to watch it again to try and get what was going on. And the second time you watched it at the cinema, knowing what you know, you were just looking for little things going, oh my God, that's amazing.
I was trying to look up if there were many big films before this that had such a, you know, a non-linear narrative. And I couldn't really, not like big iconic wide released movies. I'm guessing it was a French New Wave thing. I realised 1994 was sort of a coming out party for postmodernism in cinema, because we had Reservoir Dogs, which started the ball rolling for the, you know, the pop culture dialogue stuff. But 1994, this opened at the same time as Wes Craven's New Nightmare, which was like all about meta and deconstructing cinema, like literally movies impacting real life. You also had Clerks, full of pop culture laced dialogue.
Yeah.
This is the same year. This is sort of when it sort of like became an actual thing that people talked about and were cognizant of. Tarantino likes to pretend that he came up with this whole thing.
No, I don't know. I think he kind of, he brought it right into people's faces and did it in a way that
popularized it.
Yeah, but I mean, I don't think it was, as weird as it sounds, I don't think it was that much of a commercial film when it first came out. I think the snowball effect of it, which is where I certainly went into college and went, Jesus, you've got to watch this. And went straight back and watched it again.
And I say eventually it made over 200 million.
Yeah, but I mean, part of it as well was the soundtrack and being able to purchase the soundtrack with the dialogue in it, and it became something that you would put on and listen to. I certainly put it on with my ex-girlfriend, and we kind of listened to all of it, and we could replay the film as we kind of sat and listened to it. We'd listen to it in the car, and you know, that never really happened before. Yeah, you'd had songs from films.
Just recently, to date this conversation, David Soul died. And I happened to revisit, probably for the first time in 20 years since the movie came out, I happened to revisit the Starsky and Hutch pilot, which was on YouTube. And which one was he? Starsky or Hutch? Anyway, I revisited the Starsky and Hutch pilot, and the very first scene is a couple of hitmen in a car waiting for the old striped tomato car to show up, thinking it's Starsky and Hutch, and they're going to kill Starsky and Hutch, but it's not. It's a young couple necking on a date that just happen to have the same car. But before...
Not with the white stripe.
No, yeah. Because it's, ridiculous. But this opening scene is two hitmen having a chat, and they're talking about John Wayne, this movie that's on television, Red River, I think it is. And I was like, oh my God, that's so Tarantino. I don't think we can give him the credit. I think it was always there. He just popularized the use of it.
Well, I think it's also the way he did it, because he was so good, especially at the dialogue and all of it really. It's the music in the background. It's all of it. There was something special about Tarantino's early films, and my opinions on Tarantino post Jackie Brown, I suppose. We did the video. Mm-hmm. When you've made Reservoir Dogs before it, which was stylistically quite similar to this, and then when you've got Jackie Brown, which again has the non-linear in it as well, after this, to someone like me that is going, this guy, this newcomer, this American with a huge forehead, is a fantastic filmmaker. I can't wait to see all of his films. And then he starts to make, in my opinion, films that aren't quite on the same level. I know it's moving out of the LA crime scene or the gangster scene or whatever, however you want to put it. And he kind of moves into worshipping Uma Thurman, and kind of, I'm going to celebrate Japanese films. It's like, okay, but it's not. That isn't Pulp Fiction.
But it's like a lot of the same elements and what he's going for can also be said about Pulp Fiction. But it's that ephemeral, weird thing. It just works. He
hits everything, everything, even the low point, which is meant to be butch.
Yeah, that is the low point. I've listened to quite a few reviews in the last couple of weeks of Pulp Fiction, and everyone slates the performance of that poor woman. And I agree. She's actually a worse performance than Tarantino himself.
Oh, in this film?
Yeah.
Well, her character is meant to be the definition of innocence, isn't it? And she's wide-eyed. She doesn't have a clue why this watch is so important. She's got no idea, and she's there with a sweetness and voice. And it's meant to be the kind of hitting the brakes. And she's also juxtaposed with this murderous fighter, who's literally just murdered someone in the ring to make enough money to escape. So they're kind of complete opposites. So I don't know. I don't think she's a bad character. I kind of get why Tarantino would put that in the film. It's kind of all the madness and murder and all the the craziness suddenly comes to a stop after this, and it's the peace and tranquility of this woman, and he seems to be doing everything for her to kind of get them away. So I kind of really appreciated it slowing down to that, because you are there just taking everything in, subconsciously going, what the hell have I just watched? And while you're doing that, Tarantino is slowly leading you to an anal scene.
Yes.
And you don't know it's coming.
Since you brought it up, I'll do that bit now.
Anal.
I think this scene, this whole section of the film, is a double reference to two films that were both released in 1972. I'm sure you can guess what one of them might be.
Oh, is it Deliverance?
Deliverance, specifically the anal part, yeah.
The do you mean?
The anal.
You are going to beep every time I say
the anal grape.
You didn't beep that one?
Grape.
Oh, you said grape?
Grape. We've got to remember to say grape.
See, no, that time you said so you've got to, and that time, so you've got to beep those. But if we say grape, you don't have to beep it.
No.
Just when we say
I'm sure you can guess what I mean. But, yeah. Deliverance, but also Wes Craven's Last House on the Left. And I say this because there's a scene where Butch decides to help out poor old Marcellus, where he's in the pawn shop trying to choose a weapon. Mm-hmm. And this is compared to the scene in Last House where her dad, the poor grape victim, is trying to choose a weapon to use on the home invaders, and he chooses a chainsaw, which is compared to the scene in this film where Bruce has a chainsaw and decides not to use it. And considering Tarantino would later use a track from Last House in The Hateful Eight, I think it's a fair case. This is a reference to that film.
That scene, again, juxtapose it in that section of film when it's meant to be about the cute, innocent French girl who's completely out of, she's got the accent, so she's obviously not from there. So she is literally like Bambi, I suppose, where she's completely out of her element. And then you think you're in one thing, but then Tarantino takes you back into a very Tarantino-esque situation where the baddest guy in the film that you've already kind of come across with the plaster on his neck.
Yeah.
He's there being raped by an auxiliary character that, you don't know who this guy is. He's just come out of nowhere.
But I mean, it's a great moment in the movie because he's still taking a risk by saving Marcellus. Who's to say that helping him out and getting revenge on these hillbillies, maybe he's still kill him just for knowing that he's been, sodomized. But the fact that Marcellus, this big bad guy, actually decides to say, let bygones be bygones and let him go. It's a redemptive arc to the movie that this character has.
Yeah.
He's almost making up for the fact that he killed this guy in the ring,
And lost Marcellus Wallace a lot of money as well.
Yeah.
Because it was obviously kind of rigged, but he kind of double crossed. He knowing it, he betted on himself, and so it's really clever. And
I love the fact as well, going back to the 90s, which obviously was a much cooler time, the fact that this whole scene was parodied in The Simpsons, complete with the mouth gags. I mean, that's cool. That's awesome.
Well, as someone who was, how old I was, 18 in 1994, so I saw this when I was 17. Was this an 18 certificate?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
So I've just admitted that I got in to watch it whilst underage. Okay.
I think you're safe.
No, I think I'm proper safe.
Yeah.
It was something that was very unexpected. You didn't expect something that graphic, or just even that idea.
Yeah.
When you kind of heard all the noises that you hear and the da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da.
Did you know originally for that scene he wanted to use My Sharona? Apparently that was the plan. But Reality Bites used it the same year, so they didn't want to give Tarantino the rights to it. Blessing in disguise, I think. Earlier, of course, we have the heroin moment where Mia has to have the injection of adrenaline.
Yeah.
And that always makes me feel funny. That always works for me. And of course, that shot where he's plunging it into us done in reverse, of course.
Astounded. It really is astounding from the moment she kind of finds the bag of what she thinks is coke, and it's very high grade heroin. Travolta kind of hung around with a heroin user to watch. Part of his preparation for the film, part of his preparation for the film was to hang around with a user, because you've got to remember, Tarantino in this is not your usual smackhead. It's not Trainspotting. This is Tarantino, and it kind of hints that he may have picked it up when he went to Europe, and that's when he kind of got this.
Yeah.
You know, he got this habit of heroin while he was in Europe.
The fact that it's brought back Travolta and now it's become one of these staples of Tarantino to bring back like former actors, you know, and make him big again. Do you know the story about when he met Travolta?
Oh God, this isn't going to be sordid, is it?
No. But apparently he showed up to Tarantino's apartment and he completely shocked Tarantino by describing the entire layout of the apartment, because as it turned out, Tarantino was living in the very apartment that Travolta had back in his Welcome Back Kotter days, which is a cool story.
No way.
This is how they bonded when they first met. So bizarre, isn't it?
Well, and at the same time, he's hanging around with Harvey Weinstein and his shriveled up mushroom cock.
Yeah.
Weird, man.
Tarantino was simultaneously bigging him up and also saying how washed up he was, and that, you know, his part in Pulp Fiction was obviously the big thing to do to get his career back on track. You got to admit, he's amazing in this movie.
Absolutely astounding. Yeah, I think Travolta was so perfectly cast in this that, it just the way that he's kind of soft as well.
Yeah,
you kind of, there's a whole backstory there, and when you kind of, I mean, he's already made Reservoir Dogs, so he knows that Vincent and Vic are brothers.
Yeah.
So there's a backstory there.
Because he was supposed to be Madsen again, wasn't it? But he turned it down in favour of doing Wyatt Earp. Big mistake.
Really?
Yeah. Travolta and Jackson is one of the greatest cinematic pairings there's ever been. Like, you can't really have now a pair of hitmen like in Starsky and Hutch and not think of Jules and Vincent. There's just no way. But no one's come close to even touching them.
But it was the attitude that they were in no rush.
Yeah.
They didn't care who saw them because they're just hanging about this strange building, you know, without a worry in the world.
Yeah.
Talking about, you know, foot massages. Yeah. You know, again, the dialogue is just out of this world, and it isn't anything that you'd ever heard before. Certainly you hadn't heard hitmen talking about foot massages and would you give me a foot massage? And then they just snap into character and murder people.
Yeah.
While being very cool.
The first meeting of Quentin and Uma Thurman, he asked to see her feet. Because that's just what you throw in there. I mean, she probably dodged plenty of casting couch, you know, moments at that point in her life. But yeah, she obviously trusted him enough to get her feet out. I mean, there is a shot in the movie and the script is full of talking about feet. So she shouldn't have been surprised on that level, I suppose.
Yeah, but you don't want to think about Samuel L. Jackson's or Tarantino fucking feet.
Well, I found that quite funny. You meet someone and you ask to see their feet. But
if you think we should be talking more about this, leave a comment below and tell Dave this is what we need to be talking about. Weinstein, Tarantino, favours to get parts.
That whole section with Winston Wolfe. This is another question I had. Do you think Tarantino gets royalties for the use of Winston Wolfe in them dire adverts? Is it Direct Line?
Oh, the insurance.
Yeah. It is like Keitel reprising the role.
It's his intellectual property.
Yeah.
So yeah, he would have to get paid for the use of it.
That's sort of another like revolutionary use of a character or a role in a movie, the cleaner that comes in to, you know, clean up a crime scene or help out the bad guys, sort of like a Mike in Breaking Bad. And that's another story. Apparently, originally, the idea was that they were going to kill Marvin.
Shoot him in the throat, wasn't it?
That's it. And he would have died, like, horribly and painfully, so they put him out of his misery. But, like, the actor playing him, Phil Lamar, DC Comics fans will know as the voice of Martian Manhunter in various Justice League media, randomly.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yes, it was his idea to have him get shot in the head, because he theorised that would make people hate Vincent and Jules, like it was too cruel. Even though they're reprehensible, horrible people, you can still cross the line with the audience where they no longer like the characters. So I think he had a point.
But yeah, because again, you were not expecting it. You know, they were so professional in their work that, you know, for something him just turning around and talking to him, accidentally shooting him in the face, was so unexpected, and it's like, oh my God, and you're off on another tangent within the film that you're not meant to be. That's what the whole film's about, is these tangents. Vincent is very out of practice as well.
Yeah.
He's been in Europe for however long. He's on heroin now, which I don't think he was when he went away. I think that's a subtext, that's kind of part of it. So he's very unprofessional at the same time, whereas Samuel L. Jackson is very professional. He ends up living, and Vincent ends up dying.
But I mean, we've said obviously the French lady, but I don't think there's a miscast role in this film. Not really. Even Tarantino in his bit part does okay. I can buy him as Jimmy.
Yes.
Jimmy and his obsession with coffee. I can buy that.
Because he plays an LA resident that's, in a dressing gown, who's just got up, who's drinking coffee. That's Tarantino's niche. He's perfect at it.
The one thing I think we can say about him as well is that he still wholeheartedly 100% loves cinema. And he still goes on at length about other people's films, which is a rarity for filmmakers. It's not often you actually get him on the record geeking out about other people's films. Usually they're more concerned about their place in the marketplace than giving props to anyone else. But now he's got the Video Archives podcast with old Roger, and we didn't mention Roger Avary. That's a whole conversation on itself. Cutting him out of the screenwriting credit.
Oh, that is, I mean, that should be the very first thing we mentioned.
Or we can talk about it if you want.
Good. Well, no, I don't know, because I think that really does taint Tarantino's legacy on this film, especially to cheat Avary out of the credit that he deserves. Because when you know who Roger Avary is, and you kind of,
I'm a fan.
You go through this film, he's all over it. Really, his dialogue and he's everywhere in it. And to hear that he called him up and said, oh, actually, you know what? They want me as the, they want that written, directed by, and it's really important, and it exploded Tarantino.
Yeah, you can feel him all over Pulp Fiction, and Killing Zoe is absolutely full of fucking heroin use, and
you kind of get the feeling that Avary may have been the drug-addled.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, it kind of suggests that there's a knowledge of heroin there.
I suppose it sort of like speaks to him as a human being that he was able to make peace with Quentin, and now they are presenting a podcast together. So, they've done a full circle. So, obviously, I mean, I'd love to hear the conversation about it. They probably should do it one day. They probably should both get on the mic and talk about what happened. I mean, we know what happened. He wants him to have written, directed by credit, but to not even tell him himself and to get his lawyer to do it, shady.
I would argue that maybe the loss of Avary's influence created the films that I dislike more than when he had his influence.
Because he was even there for Reservoir Dogs.
Yeah.
There's like he wrote the radio chatter.
The dialogue from that.
So he was always around.
Yeah, it's a very, very clever film. It was at the time. It's one of those films that stood up to the test of time. I know I'll go on about it. Personally, for me, it's made me dislike Tarantino's later films because of the quality of this. Just the references and the dialogue. It wasn't made for middle-aged men. It was made for kind of young people, and it was a new style of not only camera work, because obviously my huge love is Kubrick, so I really appreciate the visuals, the cinematography, the focus, all of that. This was something else. It was a beautiful film, as well as a hourly beautiful film. And the soundtrack as well. All of it was just perfect, and it was very much part of that early to mid 90s zeitgeist thing where we are the youth gone wild. I'm hoping this last film that he's making, I'm sat here immediately being cynical because I've had 20 years of kind of being disappointed by Tarantino because I absolutely had so much regard for him, and you know, he was for me the modern day, not Kubrick. It was really his story telling and dialogue, as well as his direction and cinematography all in one. There are very few directors like that.